Hey guys, I am so excited to be here with you today because I'm going to be talking about the underrated superstar of the garden, which is the bean. We're going to be talking pole beans, bush beans, and dry beans. So let's get started.
Welcome to the Roots Revival with Food Prude, where we're going back to our roots and learning old-fashioned ways in a modern world. Hi, I'm Laura Lawrence, and I'm glad you're here with me.
Today we are going to be talking about the pole beans, and a pole bean means that it needs a pole or some type of apparatus to climb up on. And this happens to be my purple potted pole bean trellis that's very famous here in northern Michigan. And I know you're dying to ask, why is it so famous, Laura? Well, I'm going to tell you, don't worry. So my friend actually showed me that she had a trellis using similar type of things, and she had it a little bit lower. So she mentioned that it should be a lot taller so you can get underneath. It was a much shorter type of thing. I have been growing these purple beans for years. And so when I saw her trellis, my purple beans, I put these bad boys together, and here we go. And now I teach classes and I do garden tours and stuff like that here in northern Michigan. And so I've been able to give away the seeds every time someone comes to a class or comes and visits. So they have been dispersed throughout all the area with beautiful trellises everywhere going in, which is amazing. And now I also sell them on my Etsy shop too. So this year they've gone to Missouri, Texas, Nevada, down to Detroit. So it's very fun to see that these heirloom seeds that I have been seed saving from for many, many years are now being able to go out and blossom in other places as well. So how exciting is that? So here we're going to talk about exactly how we set up this trellis system. Now you only need a trellis system when you are doing a pole bean, not a bush bean. Bush beans won't do much. We'll talk about those a little bit later, but this is for the pole bean. So the reason why you give pole beans as much space as possible, because when you put one seed in the ground, one seed, just this far down into the ground and cover it up, and it grows. This one seed is producing this vine, this vine, this vine, this vine. It keeps going. They are actually getting twisted up there, and I'm pulling them through to tell them, wait, keep growing. There's going to be more for you. So I'm going to pull them in underneath here a little bit. They're going to realize that they actually have more space to keep growing. So that one seed is going to put on how many different flowers, which means how many different beans or how many quantity of beans are going to be on one single seed. That's what is amazing. So they will grow. So the more space you give them, the more that they'll grow. Now, eventually they'll cap out. I'm not saying they can be a skyscraper or anything like that, but I'm going to have this whole area filled in. These have been planted for about maybe 5 weeks. So this is already doing such a great job. So once they realize that they have no more space to climb, that's when they're going to start putting on the blooms. Blooms then get it turned into the pod itself, then turns into your bean that you will go ahead and partake in the deliciousness. So you can do this with any type of pole bean. This just happens to be my famous purple ones. So they will be very pretty purple flowers, and then they will turn purple beans. So this is how I plant them. These are hog and cattle panels, okay? Now they are 16 feet in length. So you put them in the ground here, and I use rebar, and I'll do a close-up shot so you can see it exactly. So I've got 2 small bars on one side and 1 on here. And then you very carefully, you're going to need to have a couple people to help you with this, because they're not like, they don't bend that easy, but you can get them to arch. Then you bend them like this, and do the same kind of thing on this side. 2 poles, just so it doesn't kick out, and 1 in the inside, just to keep it mostly secure. And I have 3 of them in a row. Now, then what you're going to want to do is I plant about every couple inches my beans, and I plant them on the outside and the inside as well. So I am maximizing the crap out of this space right now by putting in so many beans on this side and this side of them, and then they're just going to fill this in. And what's great about a pole bean or having a trellis like this is that, one, they're off the ground, so they're not as dirty. 2, it makes it so easy to come in and just pluck the beans off. And I'll show you that video after this part that I talk about. But you can just come in here and pluck off all the beans. Super easy. So once you get your trellis set up, like if you need help, then you can kind of come out here, which is a lot easier. And it's really easy for the kids to plant beans, because they just grow very easily. And then for them to also pick, they might need some help reaching up here, but you get the taller kids to do that, you know? You gotta enlist everyone to help out, especially when you're growing a garden and you really want to maximize the most stuff so that you can take it and use it later on. My daughter just brought me a raspberry that we have here on the property. They're all over the place. They're just totally delicious. So here are the bean seeds. I've got lots of jars everywhere, these bad boys. But here they are right here. So here's a fun thing about beans, or about planting seeds in general. When you plant them, you just really have to go, like the little packets always say, how far down you need to go. All you need to know is double the length of the actual seed itself. So if it's something small like a lettuce seed, that's barely on the top, and you barely lightly cover it, right? This bean seed like this, you're going to go double the amount and then put that in the ground and cover it up. No need to read the back of the packets or anything. It's much simpler than what they make it to seem. So the best time to harvest your beans are when they're about 6 to 8 inches long. When they start to get a little bit longer than that, and these ones they're going to get like this, they will become woody and a little tough, and so those aren't very good. And then when you go to can them, and I've done this in the past thinking, nope, I grew these beans and I know I let them go too long, but I'm still going to go ahead and pressure can them. They still are woody and tough to chew, so just make sure you're diligent about getting out here on time and picking them when they're about 6 to 8 inches, maybe even a little bit more, but that seems to be that perfect sweet window of when to pick them. So you're going to pick them. I pressure can ours in my All-American canner, and I will link a video to how I actually do all the pressure canning. There's a video out there as well. Now, here's the fun part with beans in general. They are one of the easiest, simplest beans or seeds to seed save from. So I'm going to teach you all about seed saving. Okay, now let's talk about actually seed saving from the beans. So beans are amazing and easily to seed save from. And so what you're going to do when you want to seed save is those ones that you accidentally forget about, or you need to purposely leave some on the vine for as long as you can. So here in Northern Michigan, I'm leaving them until November or December, and then I'm actually picking them. So the beans will become really long, they will turn brown, and then they will become really dry and brittle. When they are at that brittle stage where the shell itself, not the actual bean, that's when you start to go ahead and pluck them from the vine. But leave things out as long as possible before you take them in. It has God's way of nature, just kind of making sure that that germination rate is going to be the best. So you're going to leave them here hanging for as long as possible. Or if you're doing a bush bean or a dry bean, it's the same thing pretty much. So you're going to let them dry out, and then you will go ahead and you can leave them actually in the pods itself. I do this every year because everything else seems to come up that everything's going on. You can leave them in the pods and then plant them, break the pod open next year and plant them. Or you can go ahead and get them out of the pod and drying on a plate. I like to use ceramic plates. Paper plates, like the fibers tend to stick to stuff, so I kind of stick away from that. And then eventually they will go in a glass jar with a lid. Now you're going to want to make sure that they are super dry before you put them in a jar, or they will mold, and then that's just gross, right? And they won't work as good. How to tell that the bean is nice and dry is that you put your finger in it, your fingernail in it. If it dents, it is not ready to be put away into the jar. It needs to be no dent, and then we are super dry, and we've got our bean seeds. So I hope you enjoyed learning all about the beans today, especially my famous purple potted pole beans. But again, you can do this at anywhere you want. When the beans are a couple inches tall, sometimes they need a little training up, just kind of like what I'm doing here is taking this, it's like a hairy, sticky vine, and I'm just kind of wrapping around the poles. Sometimes they get a little wild over here when they're just starting to grow. So you just got to kind of train them. So it's kind of how to train your beans, and then you just let them go, and that sticky fine hairs will do this great job of just climbing up whatever that you have to put them on. So, but I'm going to show you a DIY super easy trellis next. Hey guys, today I'm going to talk to you and show you exactly how to do 2 different types of trellises with multiple different ideas. One that my son came up with, which is a DIY, super free, frugal type of trellis system for anything that needs to climb, like pole beans, maybe some cucumbers, stuff like that. Oh, and some peas as well. So let's get started. All right, so here we have our first trellis system. This one, you'll need a truck, usually with a trailer, because these hog and cattle panels are actually 16 feet long. They are kind of heavy. You need a couple people. You need a truck and a trailer. So that makes it a little more difficult and inaccessible for everyone. So we're going to show you that DIY one next. But these are just hog and cattle panels. I'm using rebar to put on. I put 2 on one side, 1 on the other side using a hammer. And you need a couple people to help hold this in because they are pretty strong. And then you fold it over like this, and you do the other one as well. And then this way you have this amazing space right here for all your pole beans or your peas to climb up on. It works really good for pole beans because pole beans will cover in this whole entire thing like a cave, and it's absolutely fantastic. If you want to know exactly how to do all types of pole beans and beans planting, exactly how this works, I'll link it to the video down below. You're going to absolutely love it. So let's go check out my son's fabulous creation on DIY trellis. Okay, here is the DIY totally free type of way to do a trellis system for beans or peas or something like that, or even cucumbers. So here in northern Michigan, we had a crazy ice storm that was completely grid down, total devastation of all the things, where all of our treetops just literally got sheared off. 20, 30, 50 feet fell to the ground. So we have plenty of tree limbs everywhere. So my son took a tree limb and put it in the ground. And you could do this anywhere. You could just use a tree that's dead, that doesn't have a lot of foliage, or it just has a small amount of foliage because beans don't mind some shade, which works out good. He put in some of these just to make sure it was going to be secure. But this is literally just one wonderful branch that he stuck in there. And look at these beans are climbing up. Look, they're sticking out over the top. I'll show you up a close up in here in a second here. But that is a great way to spend no money, learn how to plant some beans, which grow so easily. This is a great kid project for them to do. You could use any type of fencing, like normal fencing that they could grow up on. You could use pallets. You can use any type of sticks, any type of poles with some strings. There's so many different ways to go ahead and make beans the superstar of your garden, which they are absolutely amazing because they also fix the nitrogen. They put nitrogen in the soil, and then that allows the other plants to come in and partake in the nutrients that are in your soil. So beans are just absolutely phenomenal. So this is a great way to get some beans in your garden. It takes, look at it, it's a little tiny space. There is going to be plenty of beans that come on this little plant right, or on these couple little plants. And I'm so excited to be able to share it with you because he's just coming up with great things for us in the garden. He also came up with a DIY weeding tool that I'll link to the end of this video as well. So let's go check out some other beans now. Okay, here is this fabulous invention, right? It's just a stick in the ground with planted about maybe 10, 12 beans, seeds there, growing up, growing up. Oh, but wait, we're growing up. Look at that. It actually stopped, and they're still growing way up there. He's going to get a great amount of beans on this super easy DIY trellis. Last little tidbit about beans in general, that they actually fix the soil. So they are making your soil better by putting nitrogen in the ground. What actually helps soil? But beans. Beans are great because then you have heavy feeders such as the broccoli and the cabbage and the cauliflower, which take up a lot of nutrients. So what I like to do is switch around the pole bean trellis to find new areas for it to go ahead and fix so that I start getting wonderful cabbage and different cruciferous back here in the back garden. This row that we have right here in front of me, that row right there that you see, those are potatoes. We absolutely love potatoes, but we're talking about all about the beans, so don't let me get sidetracked, which can be very easily for me. So these are actually black beans. These are a dry bean, but it's basically the same thing as a bush bean. They do not need that big long trellis or a pole to grow on. They just are basically little bush beans. So you would plant these the exact same way, double the length down into the ground. And I plant them about this far apart. I kind of get them smushier together than a lot what they recommend, but it seems to work out okay. then you're just going to let them grow. Now these guys will give you, the bush beans will give you a harvest a lot quicker than the pole beans because they're spending so much energy to grow into the very long thing. The bush beans, you can get them done so quick. You could do a couple, you could do these in succession. You can harvest and then they'll put more on. You can harvest and put more on. You can do this in the middle of July, end of July, maybe even into August, because they can get done in 45 to 60 days for a bush bean. So if you haven't planted yet and you're listening to this video, go throw some beans in somewhere. They're magic beans. They're absolutely best thing to plant in the garden. Make your kids do it. They will absolutely love it, and they're easy to grow, which is great for every gardener. So, so these in particular are dry beans that I will go ahead. I have poles down here on each side, and then I will string lots and lots of string, maybe like 3 different strings, to help keep mine a little bit off the ground when they start growing, just because you don't want your dry beans to get moldy, because you are actually preserving the beans inside. You don't want moldy beans, right? So you want to make sure that they have airflow, and I keep them a little bit off the ground with the string that's kind of going on each side, and then I just kind of like lay their leaves on there. These I will leave out here for till they'll turn yellow. The pods will start to actually turn dry, and I will just pull the plants out, each plant like this, and I will actually stick them into my fence holes. So they're just, put the roots through it, and they're just laying there like that. That makes them dry out even quicker. They're off the ground. They're in the sunshine, and they're drying as much as possible. Then eventually, when they are pretty dry, I go ahead and put them, we will take all the pods off the vines, and we will put those into totes. And this part, you need to make sure that they are really consistently dry so that they don't start molding on the bottom. We have an outdoor wood boiler that's in a building, and it's really dry heat. So we just put them in there. You could bring them in the house. You could just leave them in single layers instead of piling them up. And then eventually we will have a child stand in the tote and stomp, 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 stomp to stomp out all of the pods from the shells. So that way, or from the beans from the pods, and then that way, then we sift through it, and then we kind of leave them on cookie trays for as long as possible to make sure they're dry. And that's when I'm using my fingernail to see if they're denting. If they are denting, they're not dry enough yet. Once they stop denting, I go ahead and put them into half-gallon or gallon jars, and then I go ahead and use them as a dry bean, which we use a lot of soups. I do pinto beans for refried beans. The black beans will be for any kind of my Mexican dishes or casseroles, and we do kidney beans as well for chili. So those are the 3 beans that we do typically every year. But the bush beans, you're going to pick them again when they're about 6 to 8 inches, depending on the variety. Some of them may be, like long. And you'll want to pick them more consistently, like at 6 inches, where that nice tender type of situation that they're in. And then that way they'll put more flowers on, and you'll keep getting continual harvest. And those ones you can pressure can, or you can pickle them, or you can just blanch and put them in the freezer, depending on what kind of equipment and space and all that kind of stuff. You got to put, there's a lot of factors in there. You got a lot of freezer room, blanch them and throw them in your freezer. Then you can just kind of grab them out when you need the appropriate amount that you need. So with seed saving, the dry beans are literally drying out on the pod just like the trellis ones. So you just save some of your dry beans that you put in your house or wherever. The bush beans, you will let some stay on the vine. You probably will accidentally forget some, which works out great. Those are the ones that you're going to let grow as long as possible, start to dry out and get brittle, and then do the same exact process as growing or drying those out so that you can plant them again next year. So that's what's great about beans. They are very difficult to cross-pollinate. I'm not saying it couldn't happen. They can, but typically they do not cross-pollinate because they have all the little parts that they need inside each of their actual flowers. They don't need like a pumpkin or a squash needs to be, there's a male and a female bloom. Those need to be those need to be pollinated, right? They need to do their thing. Beans, you don't have to do that, which is great. So then you can seed save and then never buy beans again and feed your family wonderful things. And if you're thinking, my kids will not eat beans, Laura, you just need to knock it off with this bean talk. I think, and I challenge you, if you give your kids some bean seeds and they plant it on their own and they tend to it and take care of it and watch them grow, and you can even talk about the lessons of life and God and how, we all need that little bit of warmth and nutrients. That's exactly what he gives us. We start off as a seed, right? The word from him starts off as a seed and it can flourish. Same with the, the trellis beans. You've seen how beautiful those are, right? We can all be the same way. So you can have that moment to talk to your kids about God and beans. But I'll go back to the food portion if you have some picky kids. I find it when they grow their own stuff, they actually want to snack on it more. And even if they only eat it fresh and they don't want to bring it in and like eat it during the winter after you preserved it, that's okay. Baby steps. You just got to take baby steps to get your kids to think about food differently, and beans are just really one of the ways to go ahead and just do it. So do you understand now why I say that beans are absolutely underrated superstars of the garden? They are easy to grow. You can seed save. Once you buy them, they're free. You can do space saving, and they fix the soil. This stuff is absolutely amazing. So I challenge you to go for last little tidbit about beans in general, that they actually fix the soil. So they are making your soil better by putting nitrogen in the ground. What actually helps soil? But beans. Beans are great because then you have heavy feeders such as the broccoli and the cabbage and the cauliflower, which take up a lot of nutrients. So what I like to do is switch around the pole bean trellis to find new areas for it to go ahead and fix so that I start getting wonderful cabbage and different cruciferous back here in the back garden. Forth and plant the beans.